Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, hinting at a complete withdrawal from the Korean Gaeseong Industrial Complex. South Korea makes a final proposal for talks on reopening the factory zone with North Korea. Seoul demands preventive measures to stop another forced shutdown. In what could be a major breakthrough in the Middle East peace process, the Israeli cabinet has voted for the release of more than 100 Palestinian prisoners. The cabinet also introduces a bill that would put any peace deal with Palestine to a referendum. Plus, a day after one of the deadliest clashes between Morsy supporters and security forces that killed at least 70, Egypt's foreign minister calls for restraint and an end to violence. Daybreak begins now.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Daybreak on Monday, July 29th here in Seoul, and I'm Choi Yu-sun. We start this morning with South Korea's final bid to reopen factories at the joint Gaeseong Industrial Complex with North Korea. Days after the latest inter-Korean talks on the Gaeseong resumption collapsed, Seoul says it will propose holding one last round of negotiations on this Monday. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
South Korea said Sunday it will make its last proposal for dialogue with North Korea regarding the normalization of the jointly run Gaeseong Industrial Complex. The two Koreas have held 6 rounds of working-level talks this month on reopening the business park, but the two have so far failed to narrow their differences. Seoul has demanded safeguards against future closures before reopening the complex, while Pyongyang has pushed for an immediate, unconditional resumption of operations.
North Korea must give a clear answer on how to prevent this from reoccurring. If not, the South Korean government will have to take grave measures in order to prevent further damage to the South Korean firms.
South Korean Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae said the North must guarantee operations will never be suspended due to political or military tensions. But he said Pyongyang not only refused this, but also hinted at the possibility of another unilateral shutdown in the future. Operations at the Gaeseong Industrial Complex have been suspended for more than 3 months since the North withdrew all of its workers amid an escalation of inter-Korean tensions. The minister said that South Korea will make its last proposal to the North for a 7th round of working-level talks on Monday morning through the Inter-Korean hotline. In addition to the proposal for dialogue, Minister Ryu said that South Korea will on Monday approve 5 civic groups sending humanitarian aid to North Korea and also support UNICEF's projects for infants there. He said that this falls in line with the South Korean government's stance of handling humanitarian aid separately from political issues. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter is expected to visit North Korea in an effort to secure the release of a Korean American detained there. Citing multiple human rights officials, Radio Free Asia reports the high-profile visit will take place very soon to rescue Kenneth Bae. Bae was arrested on charges of trying to overthrow the communist regime last November and was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in April. Observers say Carter may also meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his visit. RFA says Pyongyang is trying to use Bae's case as political leverage to open dialogue with Washington, but it remains unclear what effect it will have on U.S.-North Korea relations. Washington has stressed Pyongyang needs to take meaningful steps toward denuclearization before any talks can resume. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has called for summit talks or a foreign ministers meeting between Korea and Japan at an early date. Speaking at a press conference in the Philippines over the weekend, Abe said he hopes to improve ties with Seoul through talks. Analysts say his sincerity is likely to be tested on August 15th. the day of Korea's independence from Japan and the anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II. If he visits the controversial Yasukuni Shrine of Japan's war dead that day, it will likely further strain Korea-Japan relations. Abe also called for a meeting of leaders or foreign ministers between Japan and China. A territorial row between the two countries over a group of islands in the East China Sea has badly strained Beijing-Tokyo relations. Korea's rival political parties have agreed to resume their parliamentary investigation into the nation's spy agencies alleged meddling in last year's presidential election. The agreement came on Sunday after rounds of talks over the weekend as both the ruling Saenuri and main opposition Democratic Party seek to break the deadlock over the issue. The rival parties will be briefed by National Intelligence Service officials at the National Assembly next Monday and hold hearings later in the week. More discussions will take place this Monday morning to confirm the list of witnesses and references. It is alleged that the former chief of National Intelligence Service, Won Se-hun, ordered a team of agents to flood the internet with comments in favor of the ruling Saenuri Party in the run-up to last year's presidential election. The probe continues into what exactly caused an Asiana Airlines plane to crash while landing at San Francisco International Airport this month. A team of U.S. government officials arrived in Korea late Sunday, and they are set to visit the Asiana Airlines headquarters here this week for further investigation. The team, which includes officials from the National Transportation Safety Board and those from Boeing, will be on site in Seoul for the next 10 days. According to the Korean government, the team will be looking into details such as flight maintenance and pilot training programs. The Asiana jet crashed on July 6th when its tail hit a seawall while landing. The accident killed 3 people and injured more than 180.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world.
Return to the negotiations.
President Park Geun-hye planned, given the current circumstances.
On your way to work or at home.
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a.
Tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday. A number of local governments plan to or have already started raising various public utility fees. Meanwhile, the crunch is further felt in fresh produce prices that have jumped due to abnormal weather. Our Kim Hyun-ji has more on these price increases.
The city governments of Seoul and Incheon are considering raising taxi fares. In the new administrative capital of Sejong, the minimum taxi fare went up from about $2.2 to $2.50. In Cheonan, South Chungcheong Province, bus fares will go up nearly 17% next month. The Korea District Heating Corporation has already raised its heating prices by an average of 5%, which went into effect this month. That's not all. Local districts have raised or are planning to raise prices of gas, water, and sewage. Korea has a volume-based waste management system, and the price of trash bags for this system are also set to go up as well. Torrential rain has also raised the price of fresh produce, and this trend continues on in the housing market. Jeonse prices are soaring. Jeonse is a unique Korean lease system where people deposit large sums of key money, which they receive back after their lease expires. Compared to 2 years ago, the average jeonse price nationwide went up by 12% as of June. Meanwhile, for the first time in 10 years, Korea's GDP growth has fallen behind that of Japan for 2 consecutive quarters. Korea's GDP for the second quarter went up by 1% from the first quarter, while Japan's GDP is forecast to have jumped by nearly 3% during the same period. In the first quarter this year, Japan's GDP grew 1%, with Korea lagging behind at 0.8%. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
Nearly 7 out of 10 elementary to secondary school students own their own smartphones. Figures released by the Education Ministry indicate that 69% of all students have smartphones as of July 1st. This translates to 4.35 million people. Meanwhile, the smartphone penetration rate was the highest among middle school students at over 85%. Korea boasts the highest level of smartphone ownership in the world, bolstered by rising demand for high-tech gadgets and faster internet speeds. For the overall population, almost 68% of mobile consumers had smartphones as of last year, far higher than the global average of less than 15%. The government plans to conduct a survey in 10 countries to assess the image of Korea overseas. The move is in line with the current administration's efforts to promote public diplomacy. The Foreign Ministry says the survey will take about 2 months and involve 1,000 citizens each in countries such as Australia, Brazil, Canada, Egypt, Poland, and Vietnam. The results will be made public in October and be used as basic data for the government's mid to long-term policy measures. An official says this survey will shed light on how people across the world feel about Korea. Dozens of second and third generation Koreans are currently traveling around cultural and historical sites here in Korea to learn about their heritage and more about themselves along the way. Our Kim Hyun-bin accompanied them on a special trip.
These teenagers are mostly second or third generation Koreans who have come to their motherland to get a better perspective of their original heritage. 80 participants from different parts of the world are on an 11-day tour of Korea's key historical and cultural sites. The program is hosted by Hungsadan, a not-for-profit, currently celebrating its 100th anniversary.
Koreans of all sorts of nationalities come together, but through this program, I hope they realize that they are all Korean and come from the same roots.
On Monday, the teens visited Seoul National Cemetery to honor the patriots that lost their lives, fighting for Korea's freedom. Some participants have family that were veterans in the Korean War, and some became emotional thinking back about those they lost.
Because my grandfather fought in the Korean War, it's a very special meaning for me to be able to come here and visit all the people who died to protect our country.
In the days to follow, participants got a chance to visit major battlefields of the Korean War, most of them located on the demilitarized zone. It gave the group a chance to see North Korea with their own eyes, but the heavily armed border served as a somber reminder that the two Koreas are divided.
I feel that's unfortunate that even though we share the same blood, we can't even just take one step into that side.
The program will run through August 1st. Participants are scheduled to get a taste of Korean culture in the latter half of the program. The 11-day tour is not just about providing participants a better understanding of historical and cultural aspects of Korea. Its most important duty, perhaps, is giving them something they could take back home, the true meaning of being Korean. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
Turning now to what could be a major breakthrough in the Middle East peace process. Israel's cabinet has approved the release of 104 Palestinian prisoners in a move that could pave the way for the prompt reopening of peace talks between the two sides. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's proposal to release the prisoners in stages had divided the cabinet, with 13 voting in favor and 7 against. Reports suggest peace talks, which have been stalled since 2010, could now start as early as this week on Tuesday. The deal is being hailed as a major achievement by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who has carried out months of intense shuttle diplomacy. Egypt's foreign minister is calling on Egyptians to refrain from violence a day after clashes between supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsy and security forces killed at least 70. Speaking to the BBC, Nabil Fahmy said all violence must stop for the interim leadership to move forward with a transition to a new government. Morsy supporters have vowed to continue their protests against the country's new military-backed leaders, despite the Interior Minister having said the new government will act soon to disperse the sit-in protest at Cairo's Rabaa al-Adawiya Mosque. There has been strong criticism from both in and outside Egypt against the government's use of excessive force against protesters on Saturday. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry urged the interim government to respect the right of peaceful assembly and freedom of expression. Reports have emerged that the driver of the Spanish train that derailed last week, killing nearly 80 people, could have turned off a safety system that could have helped prevent the accident. Citing the sources close to the driver, Spanish newspaper El Mundo reported Saturday that the driver had switched off the system as he said it caused communication problems. A local resident who rushed to the scene of the accident also said in a broadcast interview that the driver said he wanted to die and that he needed to brake but couldn't. The driver was taken before a judge on Sunday for questioning as officials try to determine to what degree he was responsible for the deaths.
A pair of draws against Australia and China with no goals to show for 180 minutes of soccer is all Hong Myung-bo had to his coaching resume since taking over the national team. But all could be forgiven if he could beat Japan, something he did just 2 months ago in London at the Olympics. Now, for the third straight game under Hong Myung-bo, Korea was the better team for the most part of the game with the better opportunities, but Korea made a horrible defensive gaffe in the 25th minute, leaving Yoichiro Kakatani with a clear-cut breakaway for a goal which probably had Coach Hong thinking about the number 17. Just 7 minutes later, Yoon Il-ruk evened it up on a beautiful shot, making the most of his first opportunity with the national team. Now, this one looked like it was going to be a draw, but a minute into injury time, Korea's defense made another brain fart, allowing Kakatani to score his second goal of the game, leaving Korea with the loss. Now, although Korea only collects 2 points from 3 games, it should be noted that Korea owned the play in each of the games, but simply failed to finish, perhaps pointing to a lack of domestic league talent. It is also noteworthy that only 2 or 3 of the members of this team will actually start for Korea at next year's World Cup, since the European-based players will be available. Another silver lining saw Korea's women beat Japan 2-1 in their final game, which allowed North Korea to take the women's tournament. The win for Korea's lone victory, and it denied Japan's third straight title at the East Asian Cup. To baseball, when Choo Shin-soo was traded to the Reds and Ryu Hyun-jin signed with the Dodgers, July 28th had been circled on the calendars all across the Korean peninsula. It was the day the two Koreans would show down against each other for the first time, and it would be in LA, where there are more Koreans than anywhere else in the world, outside of Korea, of course. Now, certainly a very hot ticket, but most of the sizzling at Dodger Stadium was provided by Ryu Hyun-jin's fastball, which clocked at up to 95 miles per hour with regularity. He allowed just 2 hits over 7 innings, none of those to fellow Korean Choo Shin-soo, who was 0 for 3 in the game with 1 walk. Ryu struck out 9 while improving to 9-3 with the 4-1 victory. In the domestic league, the Samsung Lions were looking for their third straight series sweep as they faced the Nexen Heroes in Daegu. The Lions were trying to make it 8 straight victories. Let's go pick up that game in the third inning, and Nexen jumps out to a 2-0 lead when Lee Tae-gun wraps his second of 3 hits in the game, this one driving in Chang Gi-young. Move on to the 7th, and Chang Gi-young tallies his third hit as well. That would give Nexen a 5-1 lead. They would hang on to win at 5-2 as Samsung's winning streak is over, at 7 games. Second place LG were looking to close the gap on Samsung to 1.5 games as they took on Doosan in the Battle of Seoul. In the third, Chung Hee-yoon to left center. That would score Lee Jin-young all the way from first. Chung would later score in the inning to make it 2-0 for LG. But Doosan would have their own rally in the third. Yang Hee-ji with the single to left contributes to Doosan's 7-run third inning. That's all they needed as they win this one 7-4 over the Twins. SK at Lotte and Kim Sung-bae going after his 21st save, but he huffs and he puffs and he blows the opportunity as Choi Jung pulls this one down the line with the bases loaded. That scores a pair, and we're all tied up at 3. 2 batters later, Kim Sung-hyun beats out the double play. That would score the go-ahead run as SK edge Lotte 4-3. Park Hee-soo would close out the 9th for SK, collecting his 14th save. Kia at NC, Lee Yong-kyu, not known for his power, but he gets this not over the fence, but just deep enough for Lee Bum-ho to score on the sacrifice fly. That would tie the game up 4-4. Now move on to the 9th inning, and An Chi-hong with 2 men on is gonna launch this one to left. That's his first home run of the season. It helps Kia to an 8-4 victory. Kwon Hee-dong drove in all 4 runs for NC in the losing cons. Gaeseong is loved in Korea for leading the national team to the semifinals of the World Cup in 2002. But one contribution of his that is often overlooked was his development of Park Ji-sung at PSV Eindhoven, which really launched Korean soccer into a new direction. And although Hiddink is no longer there, it appears that Eindhoven wants Park Ji-sung back. Football International, a Dutch magazine, is reporting that the Queen's Park Rangers have almost finalized a loan to the Dutch powerhouse. Park was scheduled to undergo a physical with the Dutch side yesterday, and it should be pretty soon that he does officialize the transfer. And that is your look at sports. Remember to eat healthy and get some exercise today.
Happy Monday morning. I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your latest weather forecast. Well, we saw a drop in temperatures on Sunday, which is yesterday, under overcast skies with on and off monsoon showers, but readings will rise again today. Now, this week, summer vacation season kicks off here in Korea, so if you're making domestic trips, make sure to check the weather conditions in advance frequently. Why? Well, because monsoon season hasn't ended yet, and the monsoon front will move back and forth unexpectedly throughout the week. Now, tomorrow we should start out with mostly to partly sunny skies across the regions, and there's a chance of another set of rain in the central regions in the afternoon and likely to continue till Wednesday morning. Now, back to today's forecast. Well, right now, sprinkle to light rain are seen in most regions, and it will taper off from the central region, and cloudy Monday morning will lead to a clear afternoon. Now, please watch out for dense fog patches in the west coast and some inland regions, including the capital. Visibility can be extremely low, and the humidity level this morning will be 90% on average, which is quite misty. So with that, let's take a closer look at today's readings. Now, daytime highs will be about 3 to 4 degrees higher compared to yesterday. So Gwangju and Busan will get up to 31 degrees Celsius, that's 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and heat wave advisory will be reissued in Daegu and some of the Gyeongsang regions, and temperature for Daegu will be soaring up to 34. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju and Daejeon will hike up to low 30s, while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang will be topping out at 28 and 29. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. Well, that's all for me at this hour. Again, take extra caution when driving in fog and hope you have a great start to the new week.
And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Thank you for watching.